kind of in the forefront of what people are doing now, going overseas and kind of making that extra money, getting that extra exposure out there. And it was all because of a distribution company called Groove Attack. I don't know if you remember Groove Attack.
Yeah, I remember.
They were huge, man. I had no idea. I sold more records in Europe than I did in the States. So who knew? But yeah, you're right. The accessibility, man, of the internet really gives these kids the opportunity, man, to really kind of live out their dreams without having to really go anywhere. So let me ask you this, man. Let's talk about since you're a DJ, a B-boy, why is DJing one of the most important parts of hip hop culture?
Well, the music is the foundation, period. Without that, there's nothing else. But I do have a few issues with the narrative that the DJ was the creator of hip hop, because, and I had this discussion with cats like Kool Herc and things like that, and we talked, and of course they're like, well, the DJ, we started this, and I'm like, who are you DJing for?
Right.
Because there were DJs before you. What makes hip hop different? Well, I played the breaks. Why did you play breaks? So the dancers could stop. So who? So the dancers could rock to it. The dancers predate the DJ.
Right.
The hip hop DJ.
Right.
Not the DJ, but hip hop DJ. So I had cats saying, well, if the hip hop DJs didn't extend the break, these dancers wouldn't be dancing to it. I said, negative. They were already dancing to the breaks. They just waited till the break happened.
Right, right.
And they called it the get down, or they called it the break, whatever. So they got to the get down part, then they started getting down, right? They started rocking. First it started with rocking, like Brooklyn rocking and Bronx rocking, and then it went down from top rocking to floor rocking. Things like that occurred, right? Now, had there been no DJ, they'd still be doing it. The DJ just saw that opportunity to cater to those dudes,
right,
and extend the break,
right.
So Herc was, I guess, the first cat that specifically wanted to cater to cats that didn't dance vertically, right? So the thing is,
right.
That means that the B-boys were there first,
right?
Now he named them B-boys for Bronx boys or break boys, but they still existed. I mean, dinosaurs existed millions of years ago before we named them dinosaurs. That doesn't mean that they didn't exist until I named them.
Right.
So,
no doubt.
So I think that it's hand in hand. It's the DJ and the symbiotic relationship between the DJ and the dancer.
Right.
Whereas
that's
the dancer,
the reason why I asked you that question, man, because I know you real rich in hip hop history, man. That's why I said this. Why is it one of the most important? And I didn't say it was who started it, because I knew I'd had conversations with Herc in regards to that, and he told me that you guys had a little debate about that, and I had to lean more towards you because it makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, keep in mind, dancing, out of the four original elements, dancing is the only one that doesn't require any peripheral equipment.
Facts.
Indeed, so that's facts. You need when you write rhymes, you got to write them down. Eventually, you can forget them, unless you're like a prodigy or you have photographic memory. If you're a DJ, you need records in your hands and a mixer. If you're a writer, you need a can of paint or a pencil and a book. A dancer is the purest form of the expression of hip hop because it goes directly from your brain to your body.
No doubt. I'm glad you cleared that up for me, man. So yeah, man, in the kind of emergence of today coming through, I can't even say we're at the end of this pandemic, kind of I see the light at the end of the tunnel now, finally, though. But there's been an emergence of the importance of mental health, right? I know you created a Facebook group to kind of, have cats kind of have a place to vent. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, men in general have always been taught to man up, or don't be a little girl or be or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Because we're taught to, suffer in silence, so to speak, because that's what men do. But to be honest with you, that's caused a huge toxic, swirl of conditioning that men have had, especially in this country. Americans, are not very, it's just ironic where women want sensitive men, right? But at the same time, when they see a dude acting a little too soft, it's like, nah, son,
right.
So, man up, so, personally, I mean, I know I've seen my share of stuff. A lot of people have. My father committed suicide when I was 13. in my house. So we didn't have, at least in those days, the opportunity to be counseled by mental health professionals, because that wasn't the standard procedure then.
No doubt.
Now it is. Now they'll run you through a gauntlet of mental health professionals to make sure you're okay, but it didn't occur then. It ends up my little sister was 6 and she's the one that found him and didn't realize that he was dead. So she was talking to him for like 15 minutes until my mom could get there and everybody got there. But she didn't know. And luckily, and she went through a lot of mental health issues. And I mean, now she got a degree. She's doing incredibly well, and she's in her 40s and she's doing a thing. But there's no telling what that can do to you. And she's a girl, but I mean, I'm not saying that's different from men, but since men are taught to not really express, vulnerability, it compounds the issue. Right. So we can't even talk to our own brothers about, how they're doing until we find out they're gone, or we find out that, they're in a situation where they're in a mental institution, or things of that nature. Right. And I've known some hip hop cats that I know, like my boys, that they gone through this, and I think that having an outlet or having someone to talk to where you don't feel like you're kind of attaching yourself to the stigma of this male conditioning that we've grown up to believe can free you from a lot of that pain and allow you to heal faster.
Yeah, for me, man, the reason why I even got into therapy was because I wanted to know. I was always curious of why I was always responding to things in a certain way, right? Like, why did, I've seen some traumatic things in my life too. And what I was always concerned about was like, I have an affinity for like serial killers, right? So I always want to know like why, like what made that dude snap to say, I'm done, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna kind of try to get away with it for as long as I can. And so, but that sparked my interest in psychology and how the mind works and why certain people have that trait and others don't. And so, but in that, I was struggling with my own issues. You know what I'm saying? I suffer from depression myself. And so when I started working with kids, I started to kind of see through them some of the things that I was conditioned with. Right. And yeah, you're right. I'm of a certain age. I'm in my 40s, almost 50. And, we were taught to kind of tuck that stuff away and, you got to man up and, you can't ask for help. Right. And so, but a lot of that conditioning comes from slavery. Right. It was because you had to be a certain way or you get killed. You know what I'm saying? So you had to repress those feelings, man. And so I think it's vital, man, like your page is vital for having somebody have an outlet for people to kind of reach out when they feel in some kind of way, man. I've lost several people to suicide. And like, I wish I would have saw the signs sooner, you know what I'm saying? And had that conversation with them. Right. And so, because you never know, like it's really, people really don't fake being depressed. People really fake being okay.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I think it's important, man, to just have an outlet, man, because you never know. There's been times, man, where even my own students have caught me in a bad one and just kind of snapped me out of it and just me telling them how I felt that day, not knowing that I was helping them as much as they was helping me. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's important, man, for us men in particular to get rid of that stigma of mental health being a bad thing. And so with that said, though, in our business, the music business, man, there's a lot of artists that suffer. They suffer in silence because of this code of having to be tough and having to be street and all that type of stuff, man. And they self-medicate a lot, right? I know being young and being on tour and watching cats like Coolio on tour and seeing, the level of destructiveness that goes on a tour. Where does that come from for us, man? Is it just people not having a whole lot of nothing and then finally getting something and just doing it excessively? Or is that you feel like it's a mental health stigma attached to that?
Well, keep in mind, escapism isn't relegated to just cats from the hood or these cats that didn't have, the have-nots.
Indeed.
Rich people do it too.
Sure.
they may use different methods,
right.
some of them
they may use a
spend a
better
lot of
grade
money.
of drugs than we
Better
do.
grade of drug or different type of drug, or
Right.
not even drugs at all. Some of them just blow their money because they have millions of dollars. They'll blow their money on things that are insignificant because they feel that somehow will, negate some of their pain or whatever. I'll just buy myself a new boat. And they
Right.
got 3 boats sitting there, 5 cars. Why did you buy? Why, like, is there a purpose for having multiple? You only can drive one car at a time. Now, I
Right.
understand if you have a SUV for days, you need an SUV and a regular car. But when you get like 7, 8, 9 cars, if you're not a collector, why is that something that you do?
Right.
There's nothing that's actually productive about that. So then you got to start asking, why do people do that? And that happens with everybody. There's people that binge eat when they get depressed. There's people that buy shoes because they're like,
Right.
they just need something to be like, what? It's like a distraction. So escapism isn't related. It's just relegated to us.
For sure.
Unfortunately, since we in the hood, escapism usually funnels through whatever we can afford.
For sure.
Now, crack costs less than cocaine. So
right.
People, Cats in the Hood did crack. Heroin was big at one time, but so was dust, back in the 70s.
Right.
And I never really did any of that. That was not my thing. I was a martial artist since I was 3. So my coping mechanism was going to class. Now, when I was young, there were no kids, back in the 70s. They didn't teach kids. Like now, you go to karate school, there's a million kids, and
right.
you're lucky to see you're an adult.
Right.
Back when I took it, there was no kids. I had to be there to talk, the instructor and the teaching me, because my uncle, who was my idol, he was a Vietnam veteran. He was an airborne ranger, and he's a retired physician's assistant, and a substance abuse expert. This dude was like, "Yo, trust me, you got to let him come into the class," and I end up, that ended up being my thing, more so than anything else, actually, even music. And I'm a multinational. I'm a multi-time multi-year national champion. I know multiple arts. I got multiple black belts. That was my thing. That was my coping mechanism.
Yeah, I know. For me, man, it was music. It was you going to the record store with my little allowance, buying records, man, going to different swap meets, man, getting them penny records, some 10-cent records, you know what I'm saying, looking for anything obscure. I was a real big fan of weird album covers. So if they had a weird album cover, I knew it was something dope on that record.
Of course, yeah, that's when album covers actually reflected the material inside. But
for sure.
I was a comic book fan. I collected comic books when I was little. My pops did that. He was like, yo, you speak Spanish, you speak English. I don't want them to put you in a position where you're in like a bilingual class, and which kind of holds you back because they don't advance as fast. He's like, you're gonna learn, you're gonna learn how to speak, you're gonna learn how to, articulate. And he bought me these comic books when I was in single digits. And it worked. I ended up being in talented and gifted classes, and I was an advanced student and all that. And that was an escapism. And then, of course, I could look at the comic books and copy them and draw them in my graffiti pieces, which transitioned over to the hip hop thing.
Right.
A lot of the panels in the comic books look like b-boy freezes.
Right.
So you'd see like Captain America leaning back to throw a punch or something like that, or Spider-Man like dipping over to the cut, and then it's like, oh, that looks like a freeze. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And all of that, all of that coalesced into like this thing that we, was hip hop, martial arts. Going to the Kent Theater on 167 and watching Sonny Chiba movies. Right. Going down to 40 Deuce and seeing that, we used to do that all the time. And then, of course, when you leave the movie, you're over trying to kick your friend.
Right.
But it was an escapism. It was a way to forget that when you got home, you might not have hot water or heat.
Yeah, no doubt. The hip hop definitely was a conduit to a lot of escape for a lot of kids, man, especially coming from, the Bronx in the 70s and, New York in the 70s. LA in the 80s bred a lot of people too, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, no doubt.
So to take me back, man, to the golden era of hip hop, what was considered some people consider the golden era. We talking 87 and 93, right? So you talking the biggest acts at the time, Public Enemy, NWA, Big Daddy Kane, BDP, I would even throw, you know, the likes of Brand Nubian in through there, and then the tail end you had Onyx and the whole Duck Down movement with Black Moon.